Hello, welcome to Communicating in the Job Search Process. This is part 3, your online image. In this segment, we will talk about managing your reputation online. And it has 3 parts. First, we'll talk about your online image and what that might be. Then we'll move on to talk about positive press. And lastly, we'll talk about monitoring your image and maintaining your privacy. So just a quick quote before we move forward. It does take 20 years to build a good reputation in business anyways, and it can be quickly ruined. So it bears us taking a little bit of time to talk about it. And one of the reasons why we talk about it attached to the job communication process has to do with the fact that employers are using online information frequently to help them decide about their hires. So first of all, your image, at least your image online, is a composite of all the information that you have put there or that someone else has put there or that someone else has tagged you with. So for example, any blog you've written, social networks you were part of, reports that might end up there, even your Amazon wish list, all that stuff is a part of your image. It is gathered across the internet in various ways that people can access. The important part here is to make sure that what you want put forward is put forward. If you take a look at the slide I'm showing now, this is a professor's online image who works in gaming and virtual reality. As you can see, his image from the various places that I took pictures of is well thought out. His main picture on one of his pages shows his avatar. His scholarly work shows a list of the things that he's talked about and written about on that topic. And when you Google him, these are the first few things that show up. Having a uniform image online is incredibly important in today's time. So then what exactly is image? Image is what you present to the world. And in this case, it's done through social media. And always, your image is your reputation, because before people meet you, this is all they have to go on, is what you present to them. So why be bothered about managing your image? Again, I mentioned earlier that many employers are looking at your Facebook profile and your other profiles out there on the internet to see if you are a candidate they might be interested in. This graphic shows you exactly what I mean. So from employers, 92% of them in 2012 reported looking on their social media websites as they were looking for recruits. So as you can imagine, if you have that untoward picture on your page and your privacy is not set up well, this can become a problem. Employers are also using Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook to make sure that the candidates that they choose are someone they want to work with. Concurrently, job seekers are using these same social media sites to make sure that it's a company that they want to work for. If there are growing complaints and concerns in particular areas, at least the candidate wants to know what they're getting, what they're getting in for when they work for a particular company. If you think about social media management and your online image management very much in the same ways that companies think about managing it, you'll know that you need to make your image online and your image in person line up. 80% of issues come from the difference between what the company says it does and what you see online, and the same can be said for people. So there are a few steps to making positive press. First, make sure you can find yourself and your information online. That may mean searching for yourself in Google. Google your name. And if you're like me, you use your name some places and then you have another name that you put other places. You'll see frequently that I use enjoying in different areas instead of my real name. I just felt more comfortable at that time using that name. So you search for both of those and see if it points back to you, right? You want to find yourself and your information online. Secondly, you want to deliberately put information about you using those names. So if you are on the job market and you are interested in working with your image online, you can start with something like LinkedIn, making sure your LinkedIn profile is updated. If you have a Facebook page that you want the world to find, you would also then connect that link to your LinkedIn. So you start to show people the list of breadcrumbs. You give them the breadcrumbs to follow. And most importantly, if you find that you have negative information out there, you go about removing it as best possible. Now, sometimes it's not possible, but then sometimes it is. Sometimes it's simply you calling up a friend and saying, you know, that really awful picture that you took of me while I was sick at the bar, maybe you could take that down. And perhaps they will, or perhaps they won't. And obviously you can go about making sure that you scrub your page as best possible. But pictures like that, tagged with your name, do show up. So it makes much more sense to have the originator of the tags remove the tags or take the pictures down as well. And then third, actively monitor your online image so that you can be sure that what you want to present to the world is out there. I think some of the things that most students don't think about is just how savvy some of these sites are when they're looking for your information. If your Facebook page isn't buttoned up pretty tight and your posts are not, let's say, professional, it is at a risk that someone might find out that information. So, for example, one thing you can do when you start to put together your personal persona online is to make sure that you're using the same sets of names in all of your sites. So, for example, in my case, as you can see at this website, it'll help you figure out where the name that you give it is used and not used. So when I searched for myself, you can see that Enjoying was found at Twitch, at Basecamp, at MySpace, at GitHub, etc. Now that doesn't necessarily mean all of them are me. For example, I've never been to OkCupid, but it does mean that when my name is out there, I know I can connect those few sites together. So you can check that one out at namecheck.com and start to create a unified self online. Additionally, you should start using aggregate services to search for yourself so that you can be sure that what people find is accurate. For example, if you take a look at this composite page of different people named Joy Robinson, none of which are me, but it's always helpful to go and look and see who is out there with your name and what they are putting out there. So if you have some damage control that you have to deal with, you can deal with it. A good example is a friend of mine who was a professor in Chicago. He had created a website and we had started to look at his image online and we Googled his name. His name is relatively common, Kevin Smith. So obviously there are some famous Kevin Smiths out there. And those are easy to figure out that this is not that Kevin Smith. He's not exactly a professor in Chicago. However, at the time, Kevin didn't have his picture online. And when he put his middle initial in and typed that into Google, another Kevin Smith popped out. This guy, however, was a Florida sex offender. So obviously he doesn't want to be associated with a Florida sex offender. So being able to say, this is me, I'm this Kevin Smith, I'm in Chicago, this is my picture. No, I have never lived in Florida, and no, I have not been arrested for any kind of crime. Being able to disambiguate that information online is incredibly helpful. As you can imagine, some employer just throwing your name into Google and it pops out, that'll throw off all kinds of red flags. And while they may, follow up and figure out that that's not him, you don't even want that to be a question, right? If you give them your website and your information, then you're directing them to the information you want them to review, and they don't have to chase around the information. So you can find out information from some of these aggregate sites. The Real Scoop, for example, Spokeo, and some new ones pop up every day. And what they do is aggregate your information from various sources online and bring them together. As you can see, there are at least 3 Joy Robinsons living in Huntsville. So again, I mentioned earlier, you should consider creating your own website. On the right is my newest website, and this is my page at the university currently. And I've connected all of these. So if you go to the university, you can get to my website. And if you go to my website, you can get to my university page, etc. So that's how you make these various links across the internet so that people know that what you've placed out there and information they're reading about you is really you. So I suggest that you at least maintain one online professional persona. If that's just LinkedIn, that's fine. If you already are blogging, you might also consider adding LinkedIn to that so you can point people to your blog, etc. Companies are going to ask you for this information. Some states have laws about forcing you to turn over that information, but there are a bunch of states that don't have any laws against it. So be prepared. And although some of you may have an aversion to using some of these social networking sites, unfortunately, this is a reality. So it doesn't mean you have to post your entire world up there. If you are on the job market, just get you a simple LinkedIn site, put up where you graduated from, what your major is, and some kind of way to contact you, whether it's via, an email address that you don't really care much about or whatever, so that when a company is trying to make sure that what they're reading about is you, that you can confirm and verify that it is. So one of the easiest ways to do this, aside from a LinkedIn profile, aside from creating a LinkedIn profile, is to secure your own domain name. Like mine is joyrobinson.com. You can look and buy and purchase your own domain name and then put a simple website, blog, or wiki up there so that when people go to look for you, you go, this is my URL, this is who I am. So you can put things like samples of your writing or reports that you created or designs if you're doing designs or even student assignments or projects. It gives the recruiter a much more in-depth look at you. A, your expertise in using online stuff, right? And B, how important you felt some things were so that they could see it. Remember, your job packet is tiny. You have 2 pages and maybe a page and a half of cover letter to give to them. That's all they have to make a decision. The more information you can give them, if they choose to look at it, the better off you will be. You can also include your latest resume there, any other information, any hobbies. Let's say you like to play video games or you golf. You can talk more about that on these pages. It's relatively simple to purchase your domain name. You can try to do that either at Network Solutions, also known as netsol.com, or if you're looking for a more low budget approach where it's only $9 a year, I believe, you can go to GoDaddy and get both the space and your domain name for that price for that year. If you want to see only if your name has been taken, let's say you are Kevin Smith and you're wondering if Kevin XJKZX Smith has been taken, you can go to whois.net and search for that name for .com, .net, .us, whatever, and it'll tell you whether or not someone has already purchased it. If you find yourself in a situation where somebody has maligned your character online, there are some ways to try to get rid of it. Again, you can go to the source and ask them to untag you, take the picture down, etc. And if it becomes really egregious, you can report them to various services online. So this class is not about how to handle this negative press, so I won't go much into that. Except to say that if you're ever wondering if something you find out online is true, whether it's about somebody's reputation or otherwise, you might turn to Snopes and check and see if Snopes actually has any information on the topic. They make a big effort to sluice out the most current information about stuff online. Okay, that's all I have for this lecture. Thanks for listening.